Hello all, we're going to pause for about a minute while Zoom adds everyone to the meeting. Welcome to the SR 520 Montlake Project's April online monthly meeting. I'm Ryan Bianchi with the Graham Communications team, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Also in the virtual room, we have our presenter, Cheryl Webster, Communications Coordinator with Graham, and Robin Boyd, SR 520 Engineer Manager. Before I pass you off to Cheryl Webster for our presentation, I would like to walk through a few housekeeping items. In an effort to reduce background noise and improve everyone's experience, all attendees will be muted today. You can adjust the volume by clicking on the audio settings. During the presentation, you're encouraged to engage with us. We invite you to submit your questions as they come to you. This is helpful, so don't forget them along the way. You can send them through the Q&A box on your screen. If you would like to view closed captions during the meeting, click on the closed caption button at the top of your screen. These captions are generated by the Zoom application and are not responsible for their accuracy. When you submit a question, we request that you send short, complete sentences. This helps us when reading out the questions during the Q&A portion of the event. Please do not use the chat button. We may not see your question if you submit it that way. Now, I'll pass it over to Cheryl for our SR 520 Montlake Project presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. So like Ryan mentioned, we will be going through the current and upcoming work, how to stay informed with the project, and then we will address questions and comments at the end. So feel free to put those into the Q&A box as we go through the presentation. So just a quick review of the project for those that are new to the presentation. The project, Montlake Project, consists of three major components: the eastbound bridge, which is now mainly complete; the Montlake lid, which is inclusive of the HOV and bus lanes, and then new on and off ramps, as well as the bicycle and pedestrian bridge, which connects the paths on the north and south side of 520. So the project milestones, I'll run through all the various components and where we're at with those right now. So the HOV lane, which you can see in the left-hand picture rendering, goes up the center of the east and westbound main line, 520, and goes up onto our lid structure, and then cuts across the lid structure to Montlake. So on the right-hand side, you can see as of the end of March, that ramp is primarily complete. We do have to do some grinding of the surface there to put the ridges in for the surface. And then we have to complete the roadway on the lid portion before we can open up that ramp. So that roadway portion on the lid will also include transit center. So all of that must be complete before we can open that ramp, which we anticipate to do June or July of 2024. The pedestrian and bicycle bridge over 520 connects the Lake Washington Boulevard pathway system and area to the East Park Drive area on the north side. So in the left-hand image, you can see what that structure will look like from the roadway level. Many of you probably drive that on a regular basis and can see how that has developed out. On the right-hand picture is, again, a photo from March, where you can see some white blocks and some kind of looks like striping almost on top of that bridge. So the white blocks are the geofoam that we've been placing in order to create the elevations of the landscaping on that structure. The middle stripe, if you will, is where the path runs down the center of the bridge. What you can't see on here, but we'll talk about later, is some lighting that's been put along that walkway already. And then on the dark stripe that you can see is where the geofoam has been placed and is covered with black landscaping fabric. Shortly, we'll start placing the topsoil onto that structure, and then soon the plants. So while we're talking about paths, that pedestrian bridge goes to the north side where East Park Drive is, and then there is a pathway system on the north side of the lid that connects to the Bill Dawson Trail through the tunnel underneath of Montlake. So that tunnel's been in place, as many of you know, for a very long time, living underneath of Montlake as it shifts into its different configurations. Recently, we completed the pathway paving from the lid, from Montlake and the tunnel to connect to the Bill Dawson Trail. You can see that new pathway construction in this photo on the right. So the pathway will open, is projected to open in July 2024, once the path on the north side of the lid is complete and there is somewhere to connect to. Then we have the lid structure itself. So it consists of lots of sidewalks, trails, landscaping, public spaces. So the right-hand image is again from March. You can see that the ramps have shifted. You can see those in the permanent positions underneath of the lid, popping up to the right-hand side there. Bob, if you can trace that for me, that'd be great. And then we have the middle roadway that you see with lots of trucks on it right now. That's where the HOV lanes will come up, and the transit centers are currently being built. Along with, that's where the landscaping is being staged and moved into position. And then we have all of the irrigation pipes, geofoam blocks that are covered up, landscaping fabric, and topsoil placement actively going in that area where Bob's circling. On the bottom portion of the lid, on the south, or pardon me, I guess I should say the east side of the ramp, the bottom section of the photo, you can see that there has been landscaping topsoil placed in those planter beds between the edge of the lid and the ramp spaces. You can also see some sidewalks have been placed along that roadway. Yep. And then there is some additional sidewalks being placed along that south side of the park space and along Lake Washington Boulevard. So what all this is going to look like at the end is something like these images on this slide. So very similar to the last image on the right-hand side is what the lid structure will look like once it's all landscaped out. So some of those planter beds I just referred to will soon get trees and bushes and grass, along with the lid structure where the transit canopies will be further past, and grass space and trees planted all in those strips. So the left-hand image is a rendering of what that transit center area will look like. We've got some seating, which is shown in those bottom two small images, some concrete type seating, the transit canopies, and concrete walkway for people using that facility. So to expand a little bit on the transit canopies, because that's something that's not currently out there, but is going to be a fun structure. The left-hand image is a plan view. I'll try to orientate you all. On the left-hand side of this image is Montlake Boulevard, and running horizontally down the center of this image is the new HOV lanes. The small rectangles that look like grids, those are the plan view of the transit canopies. So there's transit canopies on the south side of this roadway, a small one on the north side that's labeled there as Transit Shelter A, and then a transit shelter on Montlake as well. So this will be, these will be completed or built on site in place. Right now, we are poured the foundations and are working on the drainage structures for these. So that will be complete soon. In the right-hand pictures, you can see what those look like from a side view. So it's a nice architectural feature and something that we'll soon see taking shape out on site. So like I discussed, up on the bridge structure, or the pedestrian land bridge structure, we have some lighting taking place. So in this right-hand picture, you can see what that structure looks like from a walking level. This picture is a little bit older than the previous one I shown, so you can see the geofoam blocks on both sides of the path here. But you can also see what that pathway kind of will look like in the lighting that runs along it. So where the gravel is down the center will be a hard surface paving with curbing, and then on either side where you see the white blocks will be landscaping. So that will look something like the left-hand image at the top, where you'll see the curb, the hardscape. There's this is a caption of the lookout, which is on the opposite side or the north side of the bridge structure. And then on the left-hand bottom section is examples of the various lighting throughout the project. So these are just examples, they're not photos from site. So don't panic or be worried about anything there. That picture that Bob's scanning on right now is the Montlake Boulevard type light structures. So that is not a picture of Montlake currently. We've had some questions about that in the past. The middle light fixture is what you will see along Lake Washington Boulevard. The right-hand picture there is 24th Avenue and the HOV area lighting. The bottom left-hand photo is what the SR 520 lighting would be, standard freeway type lighting. And then the center picture there is a graphic or drawing of what the railing looks like. You can see that slightly in the photo up top on the right-hand side of that photo. So that railing is located in multiple places across the project along the pathway. And then the bench structure there's lots of seating options. I touched on the one that's in the transit area, being a concrete type bench. There's also these wooden benches located throughout the project as well. And then along with trees, we will also be having lots of bushes and color throughout the project. So the bottom pictures there are examples of some of the plants that will also be seen throughout the project. So a lot goes on top of that lid, and to give you sort of a north to south idea of what is all aligning up, we're going to walk through this graphic. So in the top hand image, there's a red arrow. I'm going to walk left to right down that across the bottom image, and basically that tracks across that arrow from top to bottom. So working on the left-hand side, and Bob will trace me as I go. We'll start with, we have the house with the alleys right on the far left, and then there will be a large landscaping space right behind the alley that will then transition into the pathway structure. This structure splits into two sections about a third of the way down the lid. That raises up to this section, which would be the path up to Montlake Boulevard. The bottom section of this pathway is where Bill Dawson Trail connects underneath to the tunnel. So if Bob, yeah, you can track that for me. You can see how it splits off a third of the way, half the way down that lid structure. Then we move up in elevation with a strip of landscaping to the westbound off-ramp. So that is in position now. Many of you probably drive that underneath of the lid, and then it pops up onto Montlake. And then we move into another strip of landscaping, as well as the North Plaza sidewalk space where a transit shelter is. Then we'll have the transit and HOV direct access lanes and the South Montlake Plaza or Transit Center area. So that's where those transit canopies, you can see tiny transit canopy and some people standing there in the image. And then there's a various heights of landscaping while we move across the lid through green space. And that includes some more trees, the grass areas, planter beds, and then we moved to a south, we want to call it sidewalk space of the lid. And then that is again lined with trees on the south side before it gets to Lake Washington Boulevard. Lake Washington Boulevard near the 24th Avenue section is split by a median. So that west and eastbound roadways split in that area with a landscaped median down the middle. And then of course we have the existing trees. We've widened that strip in front of those homes, so there'll be some more grass space, and the existing Lake Washington sidewalk with trees and landscaping before we hit the houses. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone and kind of gives you an idea of all the different spaces that are captured across the lid. So we have recently completed the demolition of the Arboretum ramp. So it was the last section of the old ramp to be removed, which was the last section on land. So if Bob, you can trace that on the left-hand picture for me. This ramp is located where our construction offices are and WashDOT's offices are. So that ramp structure was completed last week, along with the demolition of the parking lot or ramp, the beginning of the ramp location closer to Lake Washington Boulevard there. So that was completely demolished with the exception of Pier 2, which will be memorialized on site for that group of individuals that stopped that construction. So that will that section of piers will remain in place, and we will be landscaping the upper parking lot and that section of the peninsula in the next coming weeks. So we'll discuss some closures now. This Saturday, we are having a closure of the sidewalk. I know many of you may be out and about in the neighborhood, enjoying the nice weather. So please note that the east sidewalk across the lid will be closed this weekend while we finish some work along the lid and near that sidewalk. So pedestrians will be detoured, and this graphic is a little bit incorrect, so we apologize for any confusion. But the detour will be at East Roanoke Street across to the west side and then all the way up to Shelby. So that will be only on Saturday between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The next large roadway closure is scheduled for April 26th to 29th. This is a very large closure. It's going to affect, many of the roads in the area. So I'll run through it all. We'll have Montlake Boulevard closed from East Louisa Street, so a little bit further than this graphic, all the way up to Hamlin. So that will be closed with a detour at Louisa. We will also have East Roanoke Street closed from East Louisa all the way to Montlake Boulevard, and then a small section of the east side of East Roanoke Street, so east side of Montlake, that is, just on the corner section there, and should not affect much of that roadway. We'll also have Lake Washington Boulevard closed from Montlake all the way back to East Foster. It'll be open for local traffic where possible up to Roanoke, but we are doing curbing and pouring of concrete along the roadway, so access will be extremely limited. We will be touching base with the neighbors along that roadway. I saw a couple of you were online, so expect a call from me in the next week or so, just confirming access for you. And then we will also have all of the ramps from 520 and Montlake closed so that we can complete the work on Montlake. There will be work happening on those ramps as well, but for obvious reasons, there won't be access on them. So we run through this slide at the end of every presentation. A lot of it has been covered in many forms in the past and may or may not be relevant anymore. But to run through it quickly, crews are present on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our typical loudest working hours are 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. during the week and 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. on weekdays and holidays. The third bullet point on the right-hand side there about impact pile driving is no longer applicable. Well, that work has been completed. We do work under an MPPC&V, so that's a major public project construction noise variance, which does allow us to have higher than normal construction or noises. However, there is also from time to time, as many of you know, TNVs pulled that allow us to have exceptions to that rule, and that will be occurring during that upcoming weekend closure. To monitor all of these vibrations and noise, we do have monitors scattered throughout site. So those are monitored 24 hours a day along with our work. They monitor the vibration levels and the noise levels and are reported back to our team in live time. So we do have the ability to react if there's a situation that occurs. So if you are experiencing anything out of the normal, we do encourage you to contact us because it does allow us to investigate those situations right away. Now I think I will turn it back to Ryan.
Thank you, Cheryl. In a few moments, we'll get to the Q&A. So I wanted to take a moment to remind you to send your questions our way. If you can't see the Q&A box, try tapping your screen or moving your mouse, and it may appear again. When submitting your questions, please send them individually and try to keep them a sentence or two in length. Questions that are too long or are too specific to an individual can be difficult for us to answer in the moment, and we'll need to follow up with you offline. And remember, please do not use the chat button. We may not see your question if you submit it that way. Now, how can you stay informed throughout the SR 520 Montlake project? There are a number of ways for you to engage with us. One of the quickest, most direct ways is to have a question or concern addressed is through our 24-hour hotline. That number is on your screen. It's 206-775-8885. We also manage an email account that is checked weekdays where you can submit any of your non-urgent questions or concerns. Subscribing to our email list or following us on X, formerly known as Twitter, will ensure you stay informed on any upcoming events or notable construction activities. You can watch construction progress in real time on our 4 cameras mounted in the project area. And the construction corner. The construction corner is updated frequently and has a map showing notable traffic impacts in the Montlake area. You can also find information on how we are managing construction effects like noise or vibration. And we encourage you to keep participating in events like you are today. Event information is shared through our email updates. Okay, we've arrived at the Q&A section. And I see we have a number of questions already submitted. I will read out your questions, which will be answered by either Cheryl or Robin, or both. If you feel we haven't adequately answered your question or misinterpreted it, please text us again on the Q&A. All right, so first question is, what will the space currently being used as a parking lot on the west side of Montlake next to Bird's Burgers? So what will happen with the space currently being used as a parking lot on the west side of Montlake?
So thank you for your question. think that you're probably talking about what will happen to it once construction's over, but I am going to touch a little bit on what's going to happen to it in the next couple months. So we will see construction of, and I will ask Bob to circle that plaza area on the corner. So we are building out a section of that market property to be the plaza. That's where the entrance used to be to the old gas station there. So that was roadway before, kind of got lost in with the parking lot section for the last few years. So that is being developed out as a plaza. The rest of the parking, or the rest of that space there, will be utilized by the construction team as continued parking and staging throughout the end of the project. Once the project is complete and our crews are off site, that property will be, I don't know, Robin, you can jump in on the terms, will be put up for sale.
It'll be surplus.
Surplus.
Yeah. And then it'll be sold eventually to, goes through the WSDOT surplus property process. And basically it's kind of like any other sale of a home or anything. It's advertised and then people will make bids on it and then eventually it will be sold.
So hopefully that answers your question. I see there's a couple questions about that space. And let us know if we didn't answer that appropriately for you.
Okay, next question is, will 520 ever be HOV2?
Robin, I think I'll pass that to you.
I'm not sure. I think the policy is to keep it 3+ right now. If there's enough interest and stuff like that, I think it will go. It potentially could go back or to 2 because that's what it is pretty much throughout the I guess the area. But right now they're going to maintain 3. It's always been a mystery to me myself why it's been 3. I think at one time it was just based on the volume of people using it. With the HOV line coming in and being completed eventually to I-5 and 405 area, there's a potential it could change, but right now I think it's going to be maintained as 3.
Moving to the next question. Can you share any images, renderings of what the trail or sidewalk that the pedestrians and cyclists will use coming off the Penn Cycle Bridge and extending along Lake Washington Boulevard?
Thank you for your question, Kathy. I think what you're talking about is heading south off of that bridge structure. So I don't have too many renderings of what's down there. As you can see with Bob circling there, it splits at the south end of the bridge into a path that heads south and then a sidewalk that heads west, kind of at that joint there. The path that heads south goes along the wall that is being built there right now, and then we'll end down at Roanoke. There is a future project that will pick that trail back up and head through the Arboretum. That is not part of this current project, and I do not have information or timeline on it, unfortunately. But the project here will complete that pathway down to the Roanoke type intersection there.
Next question is, what's happening in the storage area next to Bird's Burgers? And I think we already answered that. So I'll go on to the following question. Thanks for the updated timelines. When do you anticipate you will be done with the entire project, including landscaping and the new roadway sections on Montlake south of 520?
Thanks for your question, Bill. So we anticipate opening everything and having public use on it the end of July. There will be a presence of construction crew for several months following that, taking care of last punch item type things. Those might include things like a light pole or some additional landscaping. We do maintain landscaping for several years on the project, so we will have crews out there maintaining that. So there will be a presence from Graham for the next foreseeable future, but the structures and roadways and majority of the construction will be done at the end of July.
Thank you. Next question is, will the Bill Dawson Trail north of Montlake Boulevard still have the 90-degree left-hand turn underneath 520? It's a little dangerous now, and I can imagine with more bikers, it will become more so.
Thanks for your question, Pauline. Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you. The section that I showed on the previous slide of the Bill Dawson Trail where the new paving is connecting to the existing path is where our project limits end for the Bill Dawson Trail. With the Portage Bay project ramping up soon, they will be picking up and completing some more work with the Bill Dawson Trail. I can't speak to what that will look like. I'm not sure, but I'm sure that you will be seeing communications and things from that project very soon.
Next question is, sorry, I didn't finish my question on walking southbound on the east side of the Montlake Lid. It's really difficult to see if cars are stopping their right-hand turns onto westbound 520 unless you stop and turn around so you can see them behind you. This doesn't seem very practical or safe.
I'm just rereading it. Kathy, give me one sec. East. So I think you're referring to the ramp entrance, though I think. So we are aware that the intersection crossings with pedestrians are not ideal right now. We've added some additional flagging, additional timing of the lights is also being looked at, and we have been recently directed to add some do not turn on red signs to the intersections. So we hope that that will decrease any of the issues with the cars moving while pedestrians are crossing. The roadway is in temporary configuration, so I'm hoping that in the next couple months, as we finalize all of these and the signal timing is put into permanent phasing, that we will see a drastic improvement in all of that. So we do encourage you to let us know if there's issues and know that we are looking at that on an ongoing basis and making changes wherever we can.
Thanks. The next question is there a target date for when the 520 westbound Montlake exit lanes will be in their final configuration? Is this tied to the final configuration of westbound HOV exit lanes?
So yes, we are working, there will be a slight shift in the westbound traffic lanes themselves in the next few, or in the next month or so. And then we will put into place the final configuration for the westbound off-ramp. So that will be slightly ahead of the HOV exit lanes. The HOV exit lanes cannot be opened up until all of that plaza structures and lid structure is complete. So we'll see that happening at the tail end of the project in July.
All right, next question is, looks great. Thanks for sharing. Can you also provide an update on the parking strip along the south side of East Lake Washington Boulevard? Particularly, can you speak to any widening of the strip still to be done? Thanks.
Thank you for your question, Julie. So once we complete the final last components along Lake Washington Boulevard for construction, we'll be placing the final permanent striping. That does include moving the center striping line and parking strip line slightly north. So that will happen as soon as that construction along Lake Washington is complete.
When will the pedestrian bike area going to be, or when will the pedestrian bike area going to be open to the public?
Thanks for your question, Santosh. I'm guessing you're speaking to the pedestrian land bridge. So that again will be completed at the end of the project, open to the public. And the reasoning for that is that we need to be able to complete all of the sidewalks that connect to it, as well as all of the landscaping that occurs on it. So we don't want to have to open it and flag it and have you being stopped throughout your day while we are moving landscaping trucks and things across. So we're going to actively get all of that, those connections complete and landscaping done, and open it and by the end of July.
Could you please describe how pedestrians will access the Bill Dawson Trail at the completion of this project?
Thanks for your question, Sean. Bob, I'm going to ask you to trace this for me. Starting at the left-hand side where it says the Bill Dawson Trail. So that is where it connects to the existing trail right now. The path moves underneath of Montlake Boulevard through the tunnel, and then we'll pop out on the east side, north side of the lid. So that is just slightly above where Bob's cursor is. That will travel across the north side of the lid towards the westbound off ramp. There is also a section that takes you to the left and heads up to Montlake Boulevard at the Y there. The part that heads to the east, that section will connect down at the East Park Drive corner. So Bob, if you can scan to the right. Yeah, so right above where it says SR 520 trail, that's where the that trail connects up to the SR 520 trail, up to East Park or East Montlake Park, up into the Hamlin community. Also does the intersection up and across the bike and pedestrian bridge. So a couple intersections there, depending on which route you're headed. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know.
All right. For the large weekend closure, April 26th to 29th, you mentioned of Montlake Boulevard. Will pedestrians and bicycles be able to cross the corridor?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Eddie. So during that weekend closure, we're actually going to divert pedestrians away from all of the construction area. So pedestrians will be detoured at Roanoke up to 24th Avenue. And then they will be put onto the lid structure and where the HOV lanes cross the lid. So they'll be moving north up 24th Avenue and across west across the HOV lanes, and then join back up with Montlake Boulevard. There's a lot of activity going to be occurring at the intersection of Lake Washington and Montlake. So we don't want pedestrians in that area during that time, hence the slightly larger detour around all of that on that weekend.
It looks like you've answered the next two questions pretty much through that answer. What is done in terms of an investigation when noise levels are too high for nearby houses? I live off of Louisa facing Montlake and have a baby.
Thanks for your question, Claire. So we have several monitors down on that location south of Roanoke. So those monitors are reporting back to our system regularly. We also have on-site inspectors that carry noise monitors. So if something is, if we're, for example, doing construction down in that area with significant noise possibilities, those inspectors do monitor those noise levels. along with the stationary units we have in place. So that is monitored 24 hours on project, and then more significantly monitored while we have activity in the area.
Next question is, I don't see the planned Montlake Boulevard closure on the WashDOT map. Can you please update?
Thanks for your question, Alex. I just provided that information to WashDOT this morning, so I believe they're adding it this week.
Will only buses be able to use the HOV ramps on the Montlake lid at first?
So there will be the ability for pedestrian public traffic to use the HOV lanes with the 3+. We do anticipate, though, that it's probably going to be more efficient to use the westbound off-ramp to Montlake when going westbound than to navigate the potential bus traffic that'll be occupying that transit area. You will be able to get back on eastbound 520 through those HOV access ramps. That might be a more efficient traffic use as well, depending on where you're coming from. So I guess the long and short answer is yes, you will be able to. Not sure that it will be the most efficient for you necessarily.
Will WashDOT, SDOT, or Seattle be responsible for security and cleanup of plaza, transit structures, etc. after completion? And is there a management plan in place?
Thanks for your question, Jerry. There is a combination of responsibility between all of those agencies. Robin can add to this statement if he wants. I'm not sure which exact components fall into which group. Maybe Robin, you have more info on that?
Metro will be taking over the transit facilities as far as maintenance and cleanup. Parks and Rec will be taking care of all the lid and landscaping up on the lid and some of the other areas. Some of the ramps will be WashDOT responsibility. So there, like Cheryl said, there will be a lot of different moving parts as far as whose responsibility. We do have a maintenance agreement all worked out with all 3 parties, actually 4 parties, I guess. And it is in place, and when we open, we'll see how it all works.
For the planting, landscaping, will there be an emphasis on native trees and plants?
Thanks for your question. Yes, there is an emphasis on all native plants and trees and trees of significant size. So you'll see quite a lush, I think, landscape once it's all complete out there.
What were the main reasons for the delay for the planned July finalizing of the Montlake lid?
Thanks for your question again, Alex. The move to July was not necessarily a delay, but the way that it's going to be open to the public. So in the past presentations, we've been discussing when the construction itself will be complete. Unfortunately, it was causing confusion with the public, and I apologize for that. We do want to make sure we're communicating now when people will be actively able to use these spaces. So that is where the July date change has occurred, is when you'll actually be able to get out there and be present on that structure.
What are the current bottlenecks construction is experiencing?
You know what? I don't think that the construction has any bottlenecks really at this point. We have a lot to complete, but we are very busy out there. And we are on target to finish. So I think that you will start to see a large change in what that looks like out there very soon.
Will street lighting that negatively impact be analyzed and corrected upon completion?
Thanks for your question, Jerry. Yes, so once all of the lighting is in place, anything that is disruptive, I'm sure will be revisited. I think that a lot of it right now will also, you'll see a big change once all of the landscaping is in place and all of the structures are complete.
Is WashDOT Graham looking for a replacement tenant for Bird's Burgers to fulfill the neighborhood concerns regarding the loss of the former Montlake Market? If so, how is that going?
Thanks for your question, Julie. That is an unfortunate turn of events for Burbs. Being that we're so close to the end of the project, there is not a planned replacement to my knowledge for that space. We should see their trailers actually being removed shortly, and Graham will likely be occupying that small corner for the next couple months while we finish off the project.
Where can we find these slides?
So this entire presentation will be uploaded onto the WashDOT website in a couple days. So give us a couple days and it'll be up there.
Traffic management during Montlake closures have lacked specific signage and traffic management from north to south from University Village. Have any changes been made with SDOT WashDOT communication since last closure?
Thanks for your question, Jerry. And we have heard a lot of concern following that last closure. When we plan closures, we do our best with the city and WashDOT to try and minimize impact to the community. In doing that, it was decided during that last Montlake closure to try and leave the northbound lanes open. It was also a very beautiful weekend with the Cherry Blossom Festival occurring. So the hope was to keep that open and move traffic through the area. Unfortunately, our efforts to do that resulted in significant traffic in the community. So when we've been planning this next Montlake Boulevard closure, there's been a lot of discussions with the city. Originally, this closure was to be a one-direction closure. That has, as I've said, switched to a full Montlake closure to be more effective for both the construction team, but also to eliminate some of that local traffic impact that we did see on that previous closure. We have addressed some of the signage on the north side of the project. So there is, I believe, 12 added electronic signage boards north of the project throughout the community. We also utilize uniformed police officers at 2 of those intersections. So we do hope that all of that signage and the officers assist with the public and reduce what is occurring in the neighborhood up there. I think that we, with the double direction closure that's coming up, I think that it will help and eliminate some of the issues that we had on the last closure. We do hear we have heard the concern regarding the last one, and unfortunately attempts to make things less impactful did not occur as we had thought.
Will there be a big party at the opening?
Kyle, I think I must like you. WashDOT is planning a ribbon ceremony, details to follow. So yes, there will be a community event and ribbon cutting once the project is complete.
Will the intersection of 24th and East Lake Washington Boulevard be refinished to appear bricked as it was before being recently dug up, repaved?
Thanks for your question, Julie. So that intersection will not be bricked. It is slightly raised and has a slightly different saw cutting pattern on the concrete, but it won't be bricked.
What's the status of signage for the 520 exit Lake Washington Boulevard in Montlake? I still frequently see vehicles using the Lake Washington Boulevard exit and then turning right on Montlake, which makes that off-ramp get really backed up during rush hour and causes unnecessary traffic.
Thanks for your question, Dean. So out on the westbound bridge, we are going to be installing what we call Sign Bridge 10. That will add additional signage for the roadway. Along with that, the signage on the sign on the existing sign bridge closer to the lid structure will be revised with permanent signage that will indicate both those ramps. And then once the ramp is in its permanent position, there is some additional signage in that area as well. So what is out there now is all temporary until we see the final configuration in place and final signage up.
When will signage on 520 westbound to Montlake Boulevard and Lake Washington Boulevard be corrected to actually show it's a single lane exit for both? Currently, people headed to Montlake northbound miss the exit if they are following signs, then on to Roanoke exit or I-5 northbound if that's closed.
So Jerry, I think the previous question was the same idea. So again, we'll be having added signage on 520 that's in permanent position and closer to the ramps. Both are currently in temporary configuration while we finish alignments.
What was the reason for not being able to take down the large sign structure in the middle of the beautiful new Montlake overpass?
The sign structures are part of the project. As far as the reasoning behind, Robin, did you want to address that at all, or Steve?
So it's part of the required signage that we need to maintain for the interstate system there. We are working, to reduce the impacts through the neighborhood, and currently we still have to develop a plan to address how we would handle the signage if we took down the structure. It's a requirement that we need to maintain the signage currently. And we're still working through plans for what we do to address the needs for the other sign structures too that we are potentially going to replace with additional sign structures, a different type of sign structure, not a sign bridge. So we are working on that. But in the meantime, since we have it up, we're going to basically maintain it with the existing signs, the sign we put out there, which is reduced in order for us to come up with a plan in the future. And I know that there's some part of the program that's looking at that currently. It was, I believe the legislature also had money slated for it at one time. I believe that was reduced and eliminated from the bill that was passed through the legislature. So we're seeking options at this point.
Is there an expected date when the Montlake lid will be open to pedestrians?
Thanks for your question. And no problem at all. We will be opening it all up in the end of July.
And this is the last question. When is the landscaping expected on the south of East Lake Washington Boulevard?
Thanks for your question, Santosh. So currently we are just working on finalizing the irrigation system throughout the project. As soon as that is complete, we will start planting. So you should see that coming beginning of May. We did recently spray the weeds that were growing in that area and have picked a lot of those out. We'll be addressing some more in the medians during the closure weekend. And then we will be planting grass along that section, I believe, beginning of May.
All right.
Wait, we had.
Oh, one more just came in. So second time, what work is being completed by the contractors during the April 26th through 28th closures? You just run through that really quick.
Yeah, so it's a big weekend. There's a lot going on throughout the project. So I'll just capture some of the larger components. We're going to be working down at the intersection. Thanks for bringing that closure map back up. So we're going to be working along Lake Washington Boulevard, finishing some curbing and median work, along with some landscaping. We're going to be in the Roanoke area on the east side of Montlake, completing some utility investigation, as well as some curb sidewalk, ADA ramps. We'll also be on the west side of Roanoke, completing some utility work and hydrant work along Roanoke and the side street there. We'll be doing a lot of permanent paving along the northbound Montlake section from Roanoke all the way up past Lake Washington. There's also a couple sections of permanent paving on the north side of the lid on Montlake. We will be doing a lot of utility paving work in the intersection of Lake Washington and Montlake, as well as landscaping on the lid, work along the eastbound on-ramp. We'll be doing landscaping and work along the Lake Washington off-ramp, westbound off-ramp. And I think that's the large components. There's a lot of little things in additional spots going on, but that's there's a lot going on that weekend. It's a big plan, big busy weekend. Hopefully get a lot done.
Okay, another question. Where can we find rerouted bus schedules for routes modified by this closure?
We do provide this closure information to Metro in advance, so they should have that information now, and I believe they post all of that rerouting on their website.
Okay, that looks like the last question there. So thank you for calling in and participating in our online monthly meeting. If we didn't answer your question in today's meeting, we can follow up with you soon. Tomorrow, you'll receive a follow-up email within 24 hours with a 24-hour hotline number and our email address in case you're unable to note them throughout the presentation. Cheryl and Robin, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
I think that's everything from me. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.